Share हो रहा है?
Yes.
तो I go to the Dukan page, I can share it?
Yes. Dukan page.
Live हो गया?
Live हो गया.
Okay, Dukan page. Assalamu alaikum. एक सेकंड में इसको लाइव कर रहा हूँ, अभी कोई आया भी नहीं, कोई बात नहीं. ये मैं आ गया उधर.
नहीं वाला. Live.
हाँ है.
Live.
अच्छा live now. तो कैसे इसको शेयर कैसे करूँ? 4 लोग आ गए हैं. नीचे भी आ रहा है. हो गया. Okay. Assalamu alaikum everybody. बस 2-3, just please wait a few minutes. आमिर अभी आ रहे हैं. Meanwhile, I'm trying to share this on my own profile. To give me 1 second as I struggle with the technical details of Facebook. और ये अब आ गया है right post and इस पे tune. Thanks for your patience. Tune in live. I should get advice from them on what to put on my as my note. Hey, assalamu alaikum, Aamir. क्या हाल है?
ठीक ठाक. How are you?
Well, I'm doing good. Great to have you. Thank you for your time and being a part of this. So it's great to talk to you. And Aj, you know what I wanted to do is we've been inviting friends, talking about ये हमारा जो new ecosystem है, ये online ecosystem है, this new economy, ecommerce, जिसमें बहुत growth आ रही है. ये startups are raising funding. कोई healthcare में है, somebody's in like a supply chain, somebody's in it's all over. तो अच्छी चीजें हो रही हैं, but ये इसका पूरा जो rails that this is riding on, जिसकी वजह से ये सारी economy grow हो रही है. Actually, it started with something that you have been involved in from the early days. वो ये तो अब तो हमारे पास handsets आ गए हैं, smartphones आ गए हैं, but we take for granted a lot of the work that you did in the early days. So can you talk about the journey that we've gone through up until now, starting from your early days with Mobilink and the license and where the users were, phones, features, feature phones, and now smartphones? ये क्या मतलब हुआ क्या है in the last maybe 12-15 years?
Actually, it goes back to 26 years now that Mobilink has been in existence. And I guess if you include Paktel and Instaphone, close to 30 years. And what started off as a rich man's toy, a communication tool, has now transformed and become a remote control to your life. So during these last 2.5 decades, we have seen, I think, at different stages, both evolution and in some stages, more recently, a revolution. So while we had been going along increasing, the penetration of mobile phones, and then there was a better phone and a flip phone, and so on, so etc. Calling party change हुई, फिर बाकी चीजें इस तरह हुई, और फिर I think जो सही inflection points आए हैं वो पाकिस्तान के context में 2014 के बाद आना शुरू हुए, जब सही मायनों में 3G और 4G के licenses issue हुए थे. So till that time, I would call it one generation, whether we call it 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. But before internet era was a different era. And after internet era is a different era, not only for you, but also for us. So we are transforming ourselves, and we have to, otherwise we are dinosaurs and we'll have the same fate as Paktel did or Instaphone did. You either get eaten up or you get taken over. And we may not get taken over by another telecom company. We may get taken over by somebody that we haven't even thought about, that doesn't exist. So the post-internet era has been the real changing point. And in the last couple of years now, of course, just like the rest of the world, there is a lot of good dialogue going on in Pakistan about incubation, startups, whether they're in fintech, e-commerce, healthcare, etc., etc. That's all good. And we almost, like you said, take it for granted that there is a connectivity layer, which is broadband. And there is a device through which you can, use these products called a smartphone. So while in certain aspects, all the startup ecosystem takes these two things for granted, My job is to make sure that this foundation layer is continuously being invested in. The broadband layer is more robust, it is more universal, it is more reliable, and it's more affordable. And those are the battles I fight in my daily job, along with transforming my company to also compete with the Dukan.pks of the world. Right?
Not compete, to complement. It's your rails. आपके rails के ऊपर
Compliment.
ये
Now
पूरा
we have
ecosystem आपकी rails पे बना
we
है.
have, yes, we complement and we build and enrich in the ecosystem. But of course, as you know, that one of our brightest stars is Jazz Cash, and within the
Absolutely.
ecosystem of Jazz Cash, we would have products similar to the Khan.pk that does, in a way, the Shopify of the retail world of Pakistan.
Yeah. या अब देखिए अब आई मीन इस पूरी चीज की जो खूबसूरती है कि एक दफा ये रेल्स आ गए हैं और आपके स्मार्टफोन यूजर्स अब आने लग गए हैं आ गए हैं और ये ऐसे लोग हैं who've come to the internet for the first time. उनको इंटरनेट के बारे में नहीं पता. They never owned a laptop, they never had a DSL line connection. उनका पहला एक्सपीरियंस इन स्मार्टफोन्स के ऊपर है. अब हम जैसे लोग were creating एप्स बना रहे हैं. कोई ये कर रहा है, कोई वो कर रहा है. उनमें से कुछ चीजें हैं जो कि हिट होंगी और कुछ चीजें हैं जो कि फ्लॉप होंगी. But I think what I find beautiful is that no one can really predict कि क्या होगा and what's going to be a success. And in my mind, this whole ecosystem that's being built, जैसे new players आ रहे हैं और ये आपस में they start interconnecting, more values created than one company saying कि यार हम सब कुछ करेंगे, हम ये भी करेंगे, वो भी करेंगे, because historically वो आज तक हुआ नहीं है. तो इसके बारे में क्या ख्याल है आपका?
देखिए, so it's not really about whether it is Jazz or even Google or anybody else that they want to do. I think the important thing is that companies have to be humble enough to both recognize that they can't do anything, everything, and they also have to recognize that what got them here will not get them there, and they can't keep on residing on their existing success and existing business model. So it's better that I disrupt myself rather than being disrupted by somebody else. So there is.
I was talking there. Yeah, आपने एक amazing thing you've just said. This is beautiful. अब मुझे बता so historically, I think I spoke about this earlier as well. When we started my first startup, as you know, with Rosie, our jobs platform, when we came, the incumbent was a newspaper, the print जो classifieds थे. Now, the publishing industry, the print industry, saw the internet growing off the back of the connections you're laying and your phones and your licenses and the cell towers and 3G. So they saw it coming. We grew very fast on the online jobs space, classifieds, and we're still growing very quickly now. But the newspapers saw it coming. They've seen the disruption happen globally, but they refuse to disrupt themselves because the new pricing model in the new economy wasn't viable as compared to how much they sold a print ad for. So can Jazz really disrupt itself?
Yeah. So I think it may be a slightly different thing because we have to evolve quickly. So within our company, ever since I've come over here, we look at ourselves less as a telecom company, right? Of course, to the outside world, we still build towers and sell SIMs, but that doesn't really get me excited or makes me jump out of bed, right? So we are moving from being a typical telecom company to a technology company, from a technology company to an analytics company, right? So that's our journey, and I'm not trying to keep it as a secret. I think many other telecom companies have tried to do it. Some of them will succeed. But I think what is evidently clear is that for me, trying to continue to expect that I will thrive just being a connectivity player is not going to be enough. Now, connectivity is still going to be my bread and butter. I still have to put in the 4G towers and the 5G towers when they come up and do other things. But the real richness of what we're trying to do is really try to get to understand our customers through all this data that we ingest, and then to come up with solutions, products, and services that are needed by the customer, and perhaps even preempting those things before the customer actually realizes that I need the service. That's really the intelligence or the predictive part of intelligence that you get to that point. And there we will have to partner, we will have to build, buy, or borrow. As you said, we are not competitors, we could be complementing one another. So that's where we want to actually get together and learn from other companies who are startups, who are more nimble, more agile, to see what's going on in their space. And it's not coming out of some megalomaniac ambition that we want to be everything to every person, but I think it's a natural way of evolving and making sure that we can put bread on the table for ourselves in years to come.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And there's a paradigm shift, which चीजें अब change हो रही हैं. Like for example, the rule in startups used to be in Pakistan that startups shouldn't partner with startups because इधर भी risk है आपके पास भी पैसे नहीं इनके पास भी पैसे नहीं आपने कुछ बना लिया one flakes out and the whole product falls. So traditionally startups would startups want to do a partnership with you with Jazz. It's a big stable company. आप हमारे लिए ये करें हम आपके लिए ये करेंगे. Here's the equilibrium. And as a startup guy, I'll tell you it's not always fair to the startups because you're the big giant. You've got the users, you've got the might, you've got the brand. So startups have to basically play underneath this playing field. अब एक चीज हो रही है which you're probably seeing is ये जो startups हैं, this year alone, startups in Pakistan have raised $230 million. And Rosie was the first one to raise money, $2 million in 2008. उसके बाद कोई round नहीं हुआ for 3-4 years. But now we're seeing startups actually partnering with startups and starting to produce scale. So this is a new phenomenon. I think startups के लिए the playing field has a bit shifted because startups know कि yeah, my specialty is this area, आपका specialty ये है, आप इधर भागें और फिर मैं इधर भागूंगा. So in this new ecosystem where partnerships are going crazy, what is that big opportunity that Jazz can seize and play a role in growing the entire ecosystem?
So first of all, we're very happy to see this ecosystem development, and we would be very happy if somebody is even tangentially associated with us. So it's not that we have to do something. If something happens which is remarkable, exciting in Pakistan, we will feel that directly or indirectly we've played some part in it, right?
Absolutely.
So we don't need to have spotlight onto us. We're happy to reflect that thing. Then the second thing is, just like I शुरू में भी कहा कि we're actually eager to partner with them because we learn in the process. There are new excitement, there are new ways of working, there is new energy, new passion, bigger dreams. And I recognize that in a larger organization, those things become more industrialized and standardized. So one of our biggest challenges internally, I can share that, is how not to act like a big company. Because big companies are slow, they take a little bit longer, and for sometimes very valid reasons, because you're dealing with a lot of money that belongs to the shareholders, you have to have a whole bunch of checks and balances. So how do you create an innovative, agile, entrepreneurial culture within a large organization is one of the biggest challenges that I face. Right? So I want to act like a startup.
I mean, I've seen what you've done. I've seen what you've done. मुझे याद है because I've been going in and out of your offices since I started my first startup with Rosie, and Mobilink was among my first clients. So I've seen. But the culture that you've transformed there and the way you've laid out the workforce and office structure, and I remember going in and a mid-level जो manager था Mobilink में, इतना उसका office इतना लंबा था, एक lounge area भी था, आप आते थे, there's a special VIP kind of protocol. And then I remember I went recently and you were like on like a table in the middle of nowhere. And I was so impressed. How do you do this organizational transformation of something so large and inculcate into your, highly paid and skilled workforce that this is a new way to do things?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. But secondly, I would say, as happy that I'm about getting rid of some of these physical walls, the real walls are the invisible ones. And that's where we really have to do more we have to do a better job, right? So hierarchies can be broken, but we have to really go down to the processes and make better, smarter, faster decisions. That's the real challenge. Of course, when there is no physical wall, you can walk across the other person, but there could be a hierarchical wall, right? How do I go and talk to somebody who's 2 levels above? So we're trying to create a true knowledge organization where a value of a person is established by what they bring to the table, not necessarily by the grade that they have in our HR system. So those are some of the bigger challenges. There are, of course, cultural contexts. We have tried to get rid of this Aamir Saab kind of culture. Thoda bahut hota hai, kuch logon ko acha lagta hai. I also feel a little bit younger and excited when there are new kids from NUST and LUMS and they call you, hey Aamir, what's up? Like so. But the main thing behind that is that they should not feel inhibited in speaking truth to power, in bringing ideas that I need to listen to, or anybody in the organization. So that's जब आपके barriers आते हैं, होता ये है कि हम ivory tower में बैठे रहते हैं और PowerPoint और Excel के ऊपर decisions बनाते हैं. We are further away from customers, and people who actually really know what's happening at a ground level perhaps feel very conscious about ये बताना है या नहीं बताना. वो चीज़ ख़त्म करना एक बड़ी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में बड़ी ज़रूरी चीज़ है, क्योंकि अगर आपको पता ही नहीं है कि मसले क्या हैं और आपको एक सैनिटाइज्ड वर्जन मिल रही है, तो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बेहतर नहीं चलती. But
बिल्कुल.
that's the challenge of a bigger organization, whether it is Jazz or anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think people appreciate how much work it takes to make a giant organization move an inch. I mean, there's so many moving parts that hard to realize. But okay, so there's something amazing that's happened in Pakistan. We've all seen it. You've been at the driver's seat of this. Hamare internet users are skyrocketing. Smartphone users, the PTA, the connections are 103. I think आपसे बात हुई थी, आपने कहा कोई शायद कोई 80 million actually होंगे या उससे कम होंगे. But so we have about at least 80 or so million smartphone internet users, which is far more than when I started, when we had 1.5 million in 2003. अब मैं ये देख रहा हूँ where I'm sitting, with my Rosegar blue collar jobs platform on a smartphone, and with Dukan, with छोटे stores, home sellers जो कि online आ रहे हैं, अपने stores बना रहे हैं, वो they're doing sales. ये सारा काम जो अब हो रहा है 5 साल 5 years ago ये नहीं हो सकता था क्योंकि ये लोग इंटरनेट पे नहीं थे. तो there's a big shift that these new wires that you've helped laid are connecting in this new economy and workforce. So you, if I recall correctly, were one of the masterminds behind the original Jazz brand. Is that right? At Mobilink, and you chose that red wala jo color. I remember when I was rebranding Rosie, you advised me to use red, and Zohair said to use blue. And anyway, long story there. But now you've brought that Jazz brand ethos back to life in a big way. And if I recall correctly, the original brand was for the Awam. That was the Jazz brand. It was a prepaid brand. So now it's this brand that was actually helping the masses has this new energy and power. So how are you seeing this new growth of first-time internet users, of the less educated classes? What are your observations there?
So I'll comment a little bit on Jazz first, and then on to other things. Eventually, there is a branding component of it, and people get emotional about it. Eventually, a brand is a brand only if it fulfills a promise. Otherwise, it's just a logo, shape, or color, right? If it's not relevant, if it is not delivering, whether you call it Jazz or Mobilink or Kodak, it loses relevance, right? Kodak was the biggest brand for the longest time. It failed to reinvent itself, right? General Electric stayed in the stock exchange as an index stock for the longest time, and it's struggling. So koi bhi cheez for granted nahi ho sakti, and marketeers perhaps make a little bit too much about this is a good brand, this is not a good brand. Yahoo was a good brand when it came, but it's disappeared, right? Wang was a good brand. There are thousands of stories. So इसमें ओवर एक्साइटेड कभी कभी हम लोग हो जाते हैं because we've got a personal skin in the game, right? And I did mine also. But the reasons for me changing the name of the company from Mobilink to Jazz was not because I started it, but because in a telecom environment, sub-brands do not succeed. And Mobilink as a corporate brand and Jazz as a consumer brand, we were basically wasting our marketing ammunition by creating and giving life to two brands. Secondly, 99% of our customers related more with Jazz, not with Mobilink. And lastly, anything that had a link, a com or tele was yesterday. So the newer things in the internet age were more brands like, Google or something like that, which didn't really have a meaning. Jazz didn't really have anything. Anyway, that's the thing. देखिए अब दूसरी बात हुई है, even when we started Jazz, the tagline first was the affordable mobile, because this is now going back 22 years, 1999. Till that time, telecom, mobile telephony was a rich man's tool, right? साब लोगों की चीज होती थी, बंदा होंडा अकॉर्ड से निकलता था, ये होता था, स्टाइल होता था, ये था, प्रीपेड आया नहीं था, तो ये अफोर्डेबल आवाम के लिए. आज हम जानते हैं कि एक्सेस टू इंटरनेट, access to mobile telephony is almost a universal right. Even though it is not part of your SDGs, about 10 out of 17 SDGs reside on top of a successful broadband internet for all kind of a layer. So I wish that somebody had said, just like, like eliminate poverty or water for everybody, etc., etc. We should have actually said a mobile phone for everybody. That is basically how you actually earn your livelihood today. That is how you will reduce gender disparity today. That is how you will do a number of other things. So it is now becoming a foundation layer. And internet, as far as I know and understand, is one of the best ways to flatten the world and get rid of the world of its hierarchies. It is the best democratization tool between rich and poor, rural and urban. आपका कहीं से भी कोई भी बंदा सक्सीड कर सकता है अगर आप उसको एक रोबस्ट इंटरनेट कनेक्शन और एक स्मार्टफोन दे दो. सेल्फ लर्निंग हो जाएगी, लोग कमाल कर सकते हैं. सो अब चीज़ जो है, जो अभी तक सैडली थोड़ा सा स्टिग्मा पाकिस्तान में रहता है, ख़ास तौर पे हमारे डिसीजन मेकर्स के थ्रू, वो यही रहता है कि यार ये एक टेलीकॉम एक अमीरों की इंडस्ट्री है या सुपर नेचुरल प्रॉफिट्स बनाती है यार, और स्मार्टफोन के ऊपर ज़्यादा टैक्स लगा दें. ठीक है, ये टेलीकॉम के बंदा एक 5 मिनट से ज़्यादा बात करता है, उसके ऊपर टैक्स लगा दें. गवर्नमेंटल वैल्यू कैप्चर, वाइल इम्पॉर्टेंट, शुड नॉट रियली बी द ड्राइविंग फोर्स ऑफ डिसीजन मेकिंग. हमने ये देखना है कि हम इंटरनेट पाकिस्तान में बढ़ाएंगे, तेज करेंगे, तो सारे सेक्टर्स जो हैं वो आगे बढ़ेंगे. चाहे वो फिनटेक होएगा, ई कॉमर्स होएगा, आप जो काम कर रहे हैं रिटेलर्स के साथ वो होएगा. ये सारी चीजें
I mean, you know, आपकी जो बात है, it's not just you saying it, we've actually seen this play out. इसी तरह हुआ है. ये जो ecosystem अभी जो आया है with all of these new startups and VC investment, it hasn't been a result of frankly anything in terms of taxation and all of that. It's simply because of the rails or जो users आ गए. तो you know, I agree 100% with what you're saying.
जी, I would again not want to be politically incorrect, but we're not succeeding. We're not succeeding because of policies. We are succeeding in spite of them. So
yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
We need to basically, many a times we come up with policies and stuff like that, and my recommendation to the government is just get out of the way, reduce the roadblocks, right? Eliminate the roadblocks. We don't have to do a lot of other things. अगर सिर्फ हम बड़े-बड़े रोड़े सड़क से हटा देंगे, इंटरनेट खुद ही फ्लरिश करेगा. आपकी कंपनी सेटअप करने के लिए कोई आपके पास आया नहीं था, आप किसी इंक्यूबेशन सेंटर के पास नहीं गए थे. सो हमें सिर्फ टूल्स और एनेबलमेंट के ऊपर काम करना चाहिए. माशाल्लाह लोग हमारे ज़हीन हैं, हुनरमंद हैं, मेहनती हैं, और दे हैव दैट रेलेवेंट इंग्रेडिएंट्स इन टर्म्स ऑफ एंटरप्रेन्योरियल पैशन.
सही कह रहा. मुझे याद है, you know, when we raised our first investment round, international VCs, venture capital investors आए थे. It was a big deal. Yeah, you know, it's the first VC investment in Pakistan. It was very tough to do. और हम ये सोचे थे, how do we get more investors to come invest in Pakistan? क्योंकि economy is big. We're the 5th largest in the world in terms of the population. It's one of the last economies that's yet to be won online. So we said that a government should do more for branding Pakistan and fix these perception issues, and ये वो सारा तो investors आएंगे. कुछ नहीं हुआ. आपकी economy उठ गई है. You've got the payments going, you've got the rails going, and this year alone 230 million in VC investment came on its own. Nobody brought them in. Nobody said कि जी please आएं पाकिस्तान. वो अपने आप ही आ रहे हैं. तो and again, I'm going to draw this back. I know it sounds like a trivial point because I've analyzed this. This goes back to the towers that you erected and to the connections that you gave, and through your assistance in helping people cheaply acquire connections because it was in your interest. That's where this all started from, all of the bandwidth we use now. So coming down to that, I mean, so the contribution that the telcos have made is far larger than I think anybody really understands. We're looking at this as like a tax cow. Okay, मतलब इतने पैसे से आ सकते हैं. जो economic actually impact हुआ है, just in straight FDI आप देख लें, it's actually substantial. This is a small piece of the contribution. तो it's clear to me कि जितने ज़्यादा लोग इंटरनेट पे आएंगे, और आप भी यही कह रहे हैं, उतनी ज़्यादा ग्रोथ इस इकोनॉमी की होगी, उतनी ज़्यादा इक्वलाइजेशन होगी, अपॉर्चुनिटीज आएंगे. तो the person at the bottom, the small entrepreneur, the businessman, the worker, उसके लिए equal opportunity आएगी. So आपसे मेरी हो रही थी बात पहले, and you said something interesting कि अभी तक पाकिस्तान में कोई 35 million ऐसे लोग हैं जो कि they're not in telco net, they're not in the range of a tower. तो इसका मतलब है कि ना तो फोन इस्तेमाल कर सकेंगे. अगर फोन नहीं है, they can't use internet or 3G, तो स्मार्टफोन का कोई उधर there's no use. तो ये जो this number of 35 million, can we shrink it? वो हो रहा है, होगा, या वो हमेशा के लिए outside of the net रहेंगे?
First of all, Monis, you gave us a lot more credit than it's due. Maybe we just were the electricity provider, and that electricity today is internet, right? So Any new venture today does not necessarily have to keep on saying, well done, the electricity companies, right? So,
यार but आपने investment की है. The kind of
maybe,
investment you guys put
sure,
in is
we
massive
have.
amount of money.
The
Billions of
telecom
dollars की
companies,
investment
we
की है.
had a session with the president of Pakistan, Dr. Arif Alvi, this morning, and I was highlighting similar things that over the last 20 odd years, the four big telecoms in Pakistan have invested close to $20 billion. And even on an ongoing basis, they spend between $600-700 million to build their infrastructure, right? So there's a huge amount of money that goes into providing this electricity. And our services, I think we provide telecom services to more people than those who get clean drinking water in Pakistan, or those who get electricity, or those who get gas, or those who have access to schools or roads or hospitals. So, in terms of a successful infrastructure layer, the telecom industry has far better performed compared to any other element of infrastructure, and all done by private companies, right? So we take that pole position with a lot of humility and further responsibility to keep on building on that. You correctly pointed out there are still about 35 million Pakistanis who do not have access to any kind of communication services. And there are vehicles within our telecom structure industry. One of the companies called Universal Service Fund, and their mandate is to keep on going on to those far-flung, unprofitable areas and to equip them with broadband connectivity. And every year they do add more and more. Because of the nature of our terrain, as well as the nomadic populations, there will always be certain pockets which do not have, or maybe there are pockets. Let's start with Balochistan, which is like an area which is massive, and 6-7% of Pakistani population lives over there. But because of both the terrain, the lack of normal infrastructure, roads, it's difficult for us to keep on going and building towers if my engineers can't service us, if there is no electricity, if there is no fuel close by. So there are some challenges that telecom companies also face. They can't overcome those things because I have to at least send somebody over there. And then there are serious and significant law and order situations, not only in Balochistan, but in previous FATA areas, where our towers get blown up, our engineers get kidnapped, and some of them murdered. So I have a moral and a humane responsibility to protect my teams also. That all being said,
the government needs to step in. I mean, having a tower in the middle of nowhere where it's needed, because these people need the juice and they need to get emancipated the way everybody else has. But the commercial incentive is not strong. And after all, you are a commercial organization, you have shareholders. So shouldn't the government be doing more in these areas to make sure we get the connections? Because, asking you to do it is, it's nice of you to do it, but you are a commercial organization.
No. They can. And quite honestly, sometimes they're difficult terrains, but they're not commercially unviable. So FATA has been completely deprived of all kinds of communication, entertainment. So when we go and put up a tower over there, it lights up a lot of traffic very quickly. So if I could service that tower, it becomes commercially viable. The challenge then becomes security. So to give credit where it's due, the government and especially the military in certain areas which are difficult for us to access provides us with the cover to enable that our engineers go over there. Because, we want to integrate the previous FATA area into KPK, into Pakistan. We want to improve the livelihoods over there. But ever since the American exit from Afghanistan, the situation has become trickier than it was 3 months before. But yes, I think the government is stepping up as a reasonable partner in helping us enhance our access. However,
okay, ठीक है, तो आपका handset access आपने दे दी.
आपने 15% को डिस्कस कर लिया, वो कर लिया, लेकिन जो बाकी 85% है उनके पास भी देखें. अगर आप ये Dukan.pk चलाते हैं, आपके रिटेलर्स उसके ऊपर रिलाई करना शुरू कर देते हैं. फिर कल परसों आ जाता है 10वीं मुहर्रम का जुलूस और 2 दिन के लिए आपका नेटवर्क बंद कर देते हैं. तो ये एक रोड ब्लॉक हमने क्रिएट कर दिया. ठीक है, एक पॉलिटिकल रैली हो गई किसी शहर में, हमने उधर जाके बंद कर दिया 3 दिन के लिए. ये चीजें जो हैं, ये this cannot be our default mechanism to address security issues in the country. When
it's the easiest way to do it.
But it is absolutely wrong and critical. It is like switching off the electricity
It's a
कि जी
lazy way to do it. आसान है.
रात को चोरियां होती हैं तो आप 6 घंटे जो हैं वो बिजली बंद कर दें, ये तो कोई तरीका नहीं हुआ
Makes
ना.
no sense.
सो
Makes no sense.
आपका उबर ड्राइवर, फूड बेंडा, क्रीम, दवागो, जितने भी आपके बिजनेसेस चल रही हैं ऑनलाइन के ऊपर, जब आप
दुकानदार हमारे 1 लाख हो गए अब FYI. हाँ.
दुकानदार, सो जितने हैं ये सारे के सारे किस चीज के ऊपर रिलाई करते हैं? ब्रॉडबैंड इंटरनेट के ऊपर. वो कहाँ से आता है? वो मोबाइल टेलीकॉम कंपनीज प्रोवाइड करती हैं. सो जब आप उनको बंद करेंगे तो सिर्फ हमारा नुकसान नहीं होता, हमारे ऊपर जितना भी डिजिटल ई कॉमर्स या इकोसिस्टम चलता है वो सारा बंद होता है. सो ये मेरी एक कांस्टेंट बैटल रहती है हुकूमत के साथ कि वी हैव टू स्टॉप लुकिंग एट दिस इंडस्ट्री फ्रॉम टू फोल्ड परस्पेक्टिव. Yes, I fully understand as a country we need to generate revenues, but let's be greedy in the long and medium term. We cannot penalize this industry because this is the industry of the future. If you penalize it, you are basically depriving your future by paying for your present and your past. You're taking and you're putting more burden on this industry to provide subsidies onto which industries? Construction, cement, sugar, all those things which are industries of the past. So let's not deprive our children a better future because we had to pay for the past. That's number one. Secondly, we have to find better mechanism of improving our security apparatus in the country, and we cannot allow network closures कि जी आज ये मसला हो गया, चलें जी पहली चीज़ ये है जी आज बंद होएगा. पिछली दफ़ा जब कराची में फ्लड्स आए थे वो कब आए थे? There were some other events closer to that thing. I think it was maybe 9th, 10th of Muharram. And they also blocked the network on the 8th to be extraordinarily safe. Around the same time, the floods came in. So K Electric was dependent on our network to solve their problems. They were calling me, I was calling them because my network was down because of them. So it was a khichdi. ये चीजें हमें अब फर्क सोचनी पड़ेंगी.
तो ठीक है, you're doing a lot of work. The government is trying with USF. I can say this because I'm not in the government or I don't run Jazz, but I don't think it's moving at the rate it needs to be. It's not moving fast enough. But you don't have to say anything on that. No problem.
I can say the same thing because I've been very vocal about, people keep on asking me about digital opportunities, and the term that I use is digital emergency. The reason being that we actually have to really create a sense of urgency. And even today we were, and some of my colleagues were very vocal with the President of Pakistan that, listen, no matter how we look at it, whether it is my fault as Jazz or government or PTS fault, it doesn't really matter. We can do introspection till the cows come home. The reality is that you are 90 out of 120 countries when it comes to internet inclusiveness. Whichever report you look at it, whether it is GSM or Economist or Wall Street or whichever, Pakistan is in the last quartile of enablement. Right? And as an industry captain, I take no pride that I run the largest company in this country. The point is, am I doing enough what I should be doing? And I'm not. I can't take any solace कि जी हम लोग अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. हम सारे लोगों को जिम्मेदारी लेनी पड़ेगी, प्राइवेट सेक्टर को, हुकूमत को, कि हम पाकिस्तान को तेजी से आगे बढ़ा सकें और उन मसलों को सॉल्व करें. ये जो करंट माइंडसेट जिसका मैंने आपको 1-2 दफ़ा बताया है कि जब हम सारा वक्त ये सोचते हैं कि जी स्पेक्ट्रम से पैसे बना लें, इस सेक्टर को हम टैक्स करते हैं, स्मार्टफोन के ऊपर मजीद टैक्सेस लगा दें, 5 मिनट की कॉल के ऊपर ज़्यादा टैक्स लगा दें, तो हम सिर्फ अपने मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस जो है वो डिजिटल पाकिस्तान के कोई चैंपियन नहीं करेगी. उनका काम है नंबर्स पूरे करना, और ये एक कैप्टिव सेक्टर है जिसमें से 4 कंपनी से आपने पैसे निकलवाने. ये बड़ा मायोपिक व्यू है जिससे हमें फायदा नहीं होएगा.
So I think we're crippling our जो growth है इस economy की, क्योंकि short term goals हैं to get enough of the tax collection increase करें, and this is actually इतना इधर से impact हो रहा है, but लोग उसको they're not quantifying कि कितना impact हो रहा है when a दुकानदार opens a shop and starts to sell online beyond the neighborhood, when a driver in Peshawar is able to look for a job in Lahore and he's able to move to Lahore and feed his family. तो I mean अच्छा खासा economic impact है. अच्छा एक और चीज, ये rails तो हो रहे हैं, इसकी बात कर दी, मगर there's another issue, and I know this is important to you as well. Handset affordability. Internet to aa gaya, I've got a tower, but ye handset is 8,000 rupees. Main kaise lu? How do we crack that problem?
So that is an area, again, a big pain point for the country, because देखें हम सारी अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं 4G के ऊपर, लाइसेंस खरीदते हैं, उसके बाद हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर लगाते हैं, मुख्तलिफ एड्स बनाते हैं, वो सारा का सारा 4G को केटर करते हैं. आप ताज्जुब की ये बात है कि आज भी जो तकरीबन 50% पाकिस्तान में फ़ोन बिकते हैं या 50% सिमें भी बिकती हैं, वो 2G हैंडसेट्स में जाती हैं, वो पुराने नोकिया वाले जो फ़ोन होते थे, फीचर फ़ोन वाले. So how can we talk about digital Pakistan? We have to be very intentional about it. We have to almost forcefully sunset old technologies to step onto new technologies. This is not a natural fading away kind of a phenomena. Sometimes we have to accelerate. यहाँ आती है नीयत और intention. अच्छा, अब बड़ी दफ़ा मेरी ये फाइनेंस में बात हुई, वो कहते हैं जी यार गरीब लोग कहाँ से लेके जाएंगे. अब किसी के पास हैसियत ही सिर्फ 2,000 रुपये लेने की है तो वो 8,000 का तो फ़ोन नहीं लेगा. हमें दो चीज़ों के ऊपर काम करना पड़ेगा. एक तो ये कि 8,000 रुपये के फ़ोन को 4,000 तक लेके आए. पहली बात यह, या पाकिस्तान में प्रोडक्शन होनी शुरू हो गई है, स्मार्ट फ़ोन्स बनना शुरू हो गए हैं, होपफुली कीमतें कम होएंगी, स्केल बनेगा, एट्सेट्रा एट्सेट्रा. ये खुशाइन बात है.
What is a KaiOS क्या है जो आप
मैं बताता हूँ अभी. अच्छा, then we also have to think about alternatives. KaiOS is an alternative operating system. Let's just call it, it's the poor man's Android, right? Although Google has a small investment, it's not an Android light operating system. But ये उसी फीचर फ़ोन के अंदर आप 4G इनेबल कर सकते हैं और आप उसके अंदर बेसिक एप्स जो हैं वो इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं. KaiOS की कोई 500 से 1000 के करीब जो कॉमन ऐप्स है वो बनी हुई हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल गूगल मैप्स है, उसके ऊपर फेसबुक है, व्हाट्सएप है, यूट्यूब है. सो आप एक छोटे
ऊपर लेके आ सकता हूँ.
आप बिल्कुल आप अपने APIs लगाएं और उसके ऊपर ये जो, और आपके लिए तो बहुत रेलेवेंट होएगी, जो आपका सेगमेंट है उसके लिए बहुत रेलेवेंट है. जो रिटेलर सेगमेंट है, स्पेशली जो माइक्रो एंटरप्राइजेस हैं, उनके लिए आप इनिशियली अपनी कॉस्ट नहीं बढ़ाना चाहते बाय गिविंग देम अ स्मार्टफोन ऑफ 5,000-6,000 रुपीस. सो बेसिकली ब्रिंगिंग अ स्मार्टफोन चीपर or more affordable is one thing, and making smartphones affordable is another thing. Let me separate the distinction. One thing is bringing the price from 8,000 to 4,000. That's one way, right? You increase. The other thing is making the barrier of 8,000 lower by allowing a person to pay for that 8,000 over 2 years instead of straight away. So the cost of the ownership can be matched with the utility that smartphone brings. So that's why we were the first company to do a phone in installments. Basically, for 300 rupees a month, you could actually get a KaiOS 4G feature phone. And that's basically the right spot. जिधर 300 रुपए में आपको कुछ मिनट्स भी मिल जाते हैं, 1 गीगाबाइट भी मिल गया, आपको SMS भी मिल गए, आप YouTube भी देख सकते हैं. सो ये एक रेवोल्यूशनरी चीज़ थी जिसमें हमें इंस्टॉलमेंट ऑफ हैंडसेट्स के ऊपर काम करना पड़ेगा. सो दुनिया में चाहे अमीर लोग भी होते हैं, वो भी कोई $1,200 एकदम से नहीं देते अपने आईफोन के ऊपर. वो AT&T के साथ कनेक्शन लेते हैं और वो आईफोन जो है वो अगले 24 महीने में उसकी कीमत पूरी होती रहती है. सो ऐसी चीज़ें पाकिस्तान में भी सेटअप करनी चाहिए.
पेमेंट का क्या होगा? आवाम जो है हमारी, will they repay it? के मतलब कहेंगे
देखें उसका, थैंक यू, इट्स वेरी डूएबल. देखें, आपने अभी एक फिनोमेना देखा होगा, ऑल्दो वो होना नहीं था और ना ही हुआ है, कि सिंध गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि देखें जी, अगर आप वैक्सीन नहीं लगाएंगे तो आपकी सिमें बंद कर देंगे. ठीक है ना? तो सारे अच्छा, वो खैर हो नहीं सकता था, लेकिन दे डिड पुट इन अ रिक्वेस्ट. लेकिन आपने देखा लाइनें कैसी हैं. ठीक है ना? और बड़ी अच्छी बात है कि लोग वैक्सीन लगवाने चले गए. अगर किसी को पता होएगा कि यार मैं अपने पैसे नहीं दूंगा फ़ोन के और मेरी सिम बंद हो जाएगी, तो वो पैसे देना शुरू कर देगा. आजकल अनफॉर्चुनेटली लोग खाने पीने के बगैर गुजारा कर जाते हैं, लेकिन सिम के बगैर गुजारा नहीं कर सकते. और अगर वो CNIC ब्लॉक कर दें और उस CNIC के ऊपर ना आप जैज़ की सिम ले सकते हैं, ना जोंक की, ना यूफोन की, सारी बंद हो जाएंगी, तो द कस्टमर विल बी फोर्स्ड टू पे. दिस इज ऑल्सो अ गुड वे ऑफ डूइंग यूनिवर्सल क्रेडिट स्कोरिंग इन पाकिस्तान.
बहुत जबरदस्त, बहुत अच्छा आइडिया. अच्छा, अब the next thing I want to talk about is very important to me and I'm sure to you as well. But आपने ये बात की थी कि स्मार्टफोन के थ्रू, इंटरनेट के थ्रू, इट्स एन इक्वलाइजर. आपके जो लेस जो प्रिविलेज लोग हैं, who have more handicaps or like friction, उनके लिए आसानी हो जाती है. और इनमें से there's a segment of females, of women, उनके लिए बहुत issues हैं. For example, traveling is much harder for a woman than a man, as an example. Doing interactions is easier on a phone for a woman than having to go to an office to do a transaction, as an example. But तो naturally औरतों के लिए phone का होना is giving additional utility than to a man, क्योंकि आदमी goes on a motorcycle, he's in the market, अपना काम मतलब हो जाता है काम. But for a woman it's a fundamental handicap. मगर जो numbers हैं, आप Jazz Cash के numbers देख लें, Easy पैसा के numbers, accounts के देख लें, आप handsets, sims, women percentages उनमें से बहुत low हैं. It's not proportional to the population. क्यों ऐसा है कि हमारी जो औरतें हैं वो उस तरह इस मीडियम पे they're not as active?
I think मसला औरतों में नहीं है, मसला मर्दों में है. देखिए हमारे जो अनफॉर्चुनेटली सोसाइटल बाइसेस हैं वो अभी तक हर सेगमेंट ऑफ सोसाइटी में करते हैं. सो स्मार्टफोन ओनरशिप से ले लें, and this gap unfortunately is increasing. So the probability of a male having a smartphone is considerably more than a female having a smartphone in the same socio-income bracket. I'm not saying so एक वालिद साहब हो सकता है कहें कि यार चलो यार बेटे ने तो यार ये करना ही करना है, उम्र है इसकी ले देते हैं. लड़की के ऊपर होगा यार पता नहीं किससे बात करेगी क्या होएगा. सो ये हमारे अपने बाइसेस हैं, ठीक है. और इसमें मैं आई कैन राइट अ चैप्टर इन अ वर्स, बट इसमें ख़वातीन का कसूर नहीं है, इसमें कसूर है मर्दों का, क्योंकि हमने एक ऐसी ज़हनियत बना ली है कि मतलब हम उनको एक सर्टेन कंपार्टमेंट में डालना चाहते हैं जिसमें हमारा कोई हक नहीं बनता किसी और को डालने का. सो हमें so it's not about women emancipation, it is about men's emancipation कि हम अपने जो बर्डन लेके फिर रहे हैं ना वो उतारें और हम लोगों को अपने दिमाग जो हैं वो खुले करने पड़ेंगे. दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि आपने बिल्कुल सही कहा कि जिस तरह इट्स एन इक्वलाइजर. So while respecting women's own rights, whether they feel comfortable going to a shop or to a street or whatever else, if you enable them with internet and a device in an environment that they're most comfortable in, they have the same probability and likelihood of success as anybody else. And that happens to a person in a rural environment, a person in an urban environment, because you have given them the tools. And in that sense, I think, again, internet and smart devices could be a great enabler to lift people from where they are, regardless of their sex, regardless of their location, regardless of their income bracket. So that's why I'm a big believer that internet and broadband connectivity and smart devices is basically a fundamental right for every Pakistani.
Absolutely सही कह रहे हैं. But yeah, इसके ऊपर एक और मसला है कि आपने स्मार्टफोन भी है, इंटरनेट भी है, हर चीज है. But I'm a woman and I'm in a village. I can't ride a motorcycle because everybody says, "Oh, you're riding a motorcycle." Now, to get a connection, I have to go to the market. I have to do a biometric. मुझे उसमें डालना पड़ता है. When I open an account, I again have to do a biometric. तो मैं तो नहीं जा सकती. So isn't this unfair? How can we ever expect the women, even if the males in the household say, "ठीक है, ले ले आप," how can it ever be an equal playing field?
देखें कुछ चीज़ें टेक्नोलॉजी चेंज कर सकती है, कुछ चीज़ें हमें अपने दिमाग से चेंज करनी पड़ेंगी, ठीक है ना. तो अगर खातून मोटरसाइकिल पे क्यों नहीं जा सकती, क्योंकि उसको अभी तक बताया गया है कि यार ये आपने नहीं करना, आप बाजार ना जाएं, क्योंकि ये सेफ जगह नहीं है. सेफ क्यों नहीं है? क्योंकि उधर बुरे मर्द होते हैं. बुरे मर्द कौन होते हैं? आप जैसे और मुझ जैसे लोग होते हैं, क्वाइट ऑनेस्टली, ठीक है ना. और कौन है यार, कोई पैदा तो नहीं होता ना बुरा. सो जब तक हम, बट दैट्स अ कल्चरल थिंग. सो जब तक हम अपनी सोसाइटी को सेफ नहीं करेंगे, लोग इसी तरह फीच करते रहेंगे. However, technology can help in a few things, right? Now, maybe she can make the effort one time to go, get it BVS, etc. Maybe we can do online servicing where she can use someone else's thing, order a SIM, the SIM arrives at home, on the doorstep you can do BVS. We can work on other mechanisms through technology where a BVS can be replaced by something else. So these are certain things that technology can solve, and there are certain things that we have to evolve as a society to create greater acceptance. However, आपकी जो शुरू वाली बात थी वो बिल्कुल सही है, चाहे वो बैंकिंग होए, चाहे वो मोबाइल फोन्स होएं. अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारी जो फीमेल पार्टिसिपेशन है वो डिस्प्रोपोर्शनेटली कम है compared to their population, which is roughly about 50.5% or so. So उस मुताबिक हमारे तकरीबन जो हम अपने नंबर्स देखते हैं, जिस तरह जैज़ कैश के फीमेल अकाउंट होल्डर्स देखते हैं, तकरीबन 22% के करीब हैं. And it is not too dissimilar when we look at jazz. उसकी एक और वजह भी होती है. इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि 100 में से सिर्फ 22 खवातीन मोबाइल फ़ोन इस्तेमाल कर सकती हैं. उसमें ये है कि हो सकती है कि बहुत सारी जो इस्तेमाल कर रही हैं उनका सिम जो है वो फैमिली, किसी मेल फैमिली मेंबर के नाम के ऊपर
पे है. That's interesting. अच्छा, आखिरी सवाल आपसे, which is very इम्पोर्टेंट आई थिंक। अब देखें हमारी स्टेट बैंक ये कहता है कि हमारी जो इनफॉर्मल इकोनॉमी है उसका जो साइज है इट्स रफली इक्वल टू फॉर्मल इकोनॉमी। तो जो आपके ऑफिशियली जो आ रहे हैं, जो नंबर्स आ रहे हैं फॉर योर जीडीपी, रियलिटी में वो आधे हैं ऑफ द एक्चुअल इकोनॉमी, क्योंकि हमारी सारी इट इज अनडॉक्यूमेंटेड। आपके जो स्मॉल स्टोर्स हैं हु डोंट पे टैक्सेस, दे डोंट हैव अकाउंट्स। तो ये एक मैसिव इकोनॉमी है जिसमें तकरीबन 50 लाख एमएसएमईज हैं, जो माइक्रो एंटरप्रेन्योर्स हैं, जो ताजर हैं, जो ट्रेडर्स हैं, रिटेलर्स हैं, पीपल हु डू स्टफ फ्रॉम होम। अब बिकॉज दे आर नॉट इन डॉक्यूमेंटेड इकोनॉमी, जो बैंक हैं वो उनको लोन्स भी नहीं देते कि जी मैं आपका हाउस पेपर नहीं ले सकता, आपका तो हाउस ही नहीं है, आपका ये नहीं है, आपके इतने असासे नहीं है, तो आपको लोन नहीं दूंगा। अब उनको लोन्स नहीं मिल रहे। लोन्स अगर नहीं मिल रहे तो मैं ग्रो नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि अगर मैं दुकान हूं तो मेरी जो आमदनी है उसमें से एक हिस्सा अपनी जेब में डालता हूं और मैं स्पेंड करता हूं ऑन माय फूड एंड मिल्क एंड दूध वगैरह, और दूसरा हिस्सा आई बाय प्रोडक्ट्स। बट मेरी ग्रोथ नहीं हो रही क्योंकि आई हैव टू टेक आउट मनी। तो नॉट बीइंग इन डॉक्यूमेंटेड इकोनॉमी, इसका ये मतलब है कि ये जो एसएमईज हैं which are 40% of your GDP and about 60% of employment, इनकी ग्रोथ नहीं हो रही, and this is the fastest way to grow the economy. अब ये जो ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म्स लाइक आवर प्लेटफॉर्म, I'm sorry, I'm doing a plug with दुकान, this is what we're aiming to do, कि उनको ऑनलाइन लेके आए, we start to see the transactions, जैसे वो transactions आते हैं हमें आइडिया how to score them, we don't need असासे नहीं चाहिए, तो उसमें लोन्स भी आएंगे और ये सब चीजें आएंगी। बट आपके ख्याल में ये जो न्यू एक इकोनॉमी आ रही है, this sort of MSME economy, do you see that growing as a result of this new wave, or do you think it won't really move the needle? आपका क्या ख्याल है?
देखिए, whether it is M or regular SME, this is where majority of your employment and trade and contribution to economy and goods and services are, right? And it is still operating as it operated 20, 30, 40 years ago, cash-based and not very sophisticated, right? Whether it's market intelligence, analytics, or ability to pay using digital forums or digital means. So certainly what you're doing is quite commendable, because first of all, you're giving them tools to be able to sell their services more effectively and to a larger, further areas. The second thing is about State Bank's ambition, or maybe perhaps not State Bank's, but certainly the taxman's ambition, that to bring them into a taxable net. Now, yes, I would suggest कि ये चीज़ें थोड़ी सी हमें सीक्वेंस करनी चाहिए। देखिए, अभी तो जो बड़ी कॉरपोरेशंस हैं वो भी टैक्स सही तरह नहीं कर रही, जिनकी आपकी बड़ी दुकानें हैं वो भी नहीं कर रही। तो ई कॉमर्स के ऊपर एकदम से जब आप टैक्सेशन का जोर लेके आएंगे तो लोग इनहिबिट हो जाएंगे, वो कहेंगे नहीं जी मैं तो इसमें नहीं घुसना चाहता। रिटेलर भी होगा, वो कहेगा जी मैं पुराने स्टाइल में चला लेता हूँ, वो कल को आ जाएगा मैं नहीं इनके जो भी उनके परसेप्शंस होंगे उसमें नहीं घुसना चाहता। सो हमें पहले इनेबलमेंट के ऊपर कोशिश करनी चाहिए। देखें, and this is again a very controversial statement, we should focus on a vibrant economy first, and a flourishing economy first, and then talk about a documented economy, right? So because you know, formally or informally अगर इकोनॉमी अच्छी चल रही है, चाहे वो आपने डॉक्यूमेंट की है या नहीं की है, उसका फायदा पूरे मुल्क को हो ही रहा है। अनडॉक्यूमेंटेड क्यों होता है? क्योंकि हमें ये होता है कि भाई किसी का हक हलाल का पैसा है, किसी का नहीं है। लेकिन डॉक्यूमेंटेशन इज नॉट ओनली ऑफ हराम का पैसा इनटू हलाल, इट इज जस्ट हलाल पैसा व्हिच इज नॉट डॉक्यूमेंटेड।
That's right.
So there are two components. However, our goal and your goal as a enabler for this environment is that we should give them the tools, and my guidance to the government would be not to create onerous limitations, restrictions right at the beginning, कि जो पोटेंशियल है ई कॉमर्स का वही शुरू में ही मर जाए। क्योंकि अगर किसी छोटे दुकानदार को इतने डॉक्यूमेंट्स जमा करने हैं SECP के साथ बाकी जगहों से टू बिकम एंड टू क्रिएट अ शॉप ऑनलाइन, वो कहेगा यार छोड़ो मैंने करना ही नहीं है। डिजिटल हैज टू बी सिंपलर, क्विकर, क्लीनर, फास्टर, and allow people to get onto using this thing, come back at a later stage to start taxing them. So do it as frictionlessly with as few impediments as possible. Let people benefit from technology first, and then inshallah we will be able to document them, which I think is a right approach, and the country needs to be able to collect taxes, but do it when there is more success. Don't do it at the time of hope. This is where we go wrong. So as a country, we should tax success, not tax hope. And what you're providing is hope for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. We are startups here, and every startup knows that when you launch a service, you have to give disproportionate value back. We don't charge. It's a freemium model. Free mein aaye istemal kare. That's how I built Rosie. That's how we build organizations. Because jab ekdam se you create these markets and tractions aa jati hain, then the people are okay with paying because they're making so much off of the platform. So I agree completely that ये जो freemium वाला model है, give a tax holiday, इसको grow करने दें. इसका फायदा बहुत है because if we can document through these platforms transactions and existence and the KYC of these small idare that are outside the net, economic फायदा उसका is much more than just your taxes. आपकी B2B, the supply chains. I mean, it's a huge impact on the economy. So I agree very strongly with you. Aamir, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of this information. You are a part of the history of this ecosystem. It's got a long way to go.
I hope I can be part of the future also. So that's the challenge.
Inshallah. That's clear you will be. Appreciate your
All right.
time.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Khud Hafiz.